I just locked my bicycle to the fence. We are at the Main Street Bridge over the Bitterroot River. The conservation license is required to recreate at this site. If you have a valid Montana hunting or fishing license, you're good to go. I am not, but I'm assuming that because they mentioned those things, that's because they're talking about hunting and fishing. And I've been here before and I don't remember seeing that sign. And also, once I reach the high point of the river, it's public. So I think that that is strictly for that. But I'm always a little bit worried about rules like that. Anyway, let's take a little walk by the river. We have 2 Canada geese there. Probably resident. As I understand it, some Canada geese migrate and others will stay resident in the area. And because they're here, it's still cold, they're probably here year round. And there's a lot of food sources and shelter and places to live for geese along this river. And that appears to be a mandarin duck. That could be a wood duck, though. Point here being there is a lot of birds in Montana. So here, the water seems to have gone down just within a day or two, maybe even a couple of hours, because that mud is still wet along here. And that's pretty typical that through the spring, water will go up and down, both with rainfall, but also with warmer days. The snow will melt and then there will be more cloud cover. So sometimes there will be situations where it will rain a little bit and the river will go down because there's no longer snow melt. In other words, we're moving along a cobbly bank, pretty typical of this area, as I talked about. A lot of these big cobbles, somewhat difficult to walk on, but not terrible, and obviously worth it for the scenery. This looks a little bit like the Eel River in Scotia or in Rio Dell. It's almost a year ago we were there. And of course there are differences, especially in April. By this time, that river would be very lush. But, this is still in some ways a Pacific Northwest river with a combination of snow and rain-fed water sources, and a lot of the trees are going to be the same, a lot of the wildlife is going to be the same, and the hydrography of the river is going to be the same. So I would probably have to know a lot more and spend a lot more time to say what is the difference. But the rivers in Montana and the rivers in Oregon and Washington and California, does this look like the Skagit and the Santiam, and the Luckiamute and the Eel River? Yeah, it looks a little bit like all of those. So here we have some benches, literally rough hewn. We have some people head so. So we have these rough hewn benches. And that's a good sign because it lets me know I'm still in a park. And when we came in, it actually said Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So a state park or a state park of some sort, state recreation area, which is different than most of the parks, which are city parks. And then you wander around a while and you're like, I hope I am not getting on somebody's land. Most people here a lot of times are really friendly, especially if it's near a river like here where it's expected. And if you wander off, it won't be too much trouble. But in situations like this, I never know who's going to take offense. I'm also a little bit nervous. But here we do have benches, and I assume that this is still the park. And I talked to those people, and they said this is still the park. So let's keep walking and see what we see. We have something here. And a lot of times things like this are semi-artificial. There was naturally kind of a step in the river. But it looks like this has been maintained. I think I can see a straight line there. I've been here before, but not for a while. And this also, I guess the reason this is here is this is a redirect for this canal. And this canal, I believe, this will not sound very romantic or anything. This canal, I believe, is what serves the water treatment plant. So that's why they're redirecting water here. And I'm assuming that this is still a path. It looks like a path, and there's a bridge there. So I'm going to go and walk to that side and see what's there. Right there, next to us, we have an alder tree. So we actually have a sign that this is a park. Steve Powell Park. And I believe that's new. Maybe not this being a park area, but it having a name. And I think this bridge is new, and now I realize where I am. This is right by the other access. Still a while to go to Hieronymus Park and places like that. And I believe you have to leave the riverside. But I will walk this way and we can see more of the water. So it's not exactly what the word usually signifies, but one thing I'm trying to do here in these little pools of water is do some tide pooling to see if there's any little living animals in there. Crustaceans, tadpoles, fish, insects. And so far I cannot see anything. But that's the time of year. As you can see, those trees are still blank. No flowers out, so a lot of the food chain is still invisible. And there might actually be, if I looked closer, things in there, including that water. I don't know if that's from raindrops or something's bubbling up from the floor. So there is a really rich biome here. Just we are not going to see it today, or I'm not going to see it today. Maybe I just don't know where to look. So later in the season, in the summer, a lot of people do like to raft or tube or kayak down the Bitterroot through Hamilton. And I'm not actually sure what they do when they get to a place like this, whether they get out in portage or whether that is something that people can go down. I would not go down that inner tube, but as far as whitewater rapids go, that is not the most dramatic in the world. Anyway, so the point there is quite a lot of recreation on the water here, but much like the plant life and the animal life, it's not going on right now. Things are kind of silent. So let's walk back through this part of the park. This land conserved for future generations. I hope so. And this is a different biome than, for example, what you see in the parks south of the bridge. Because here we have like what looks like an open, like ponderosa forest. And I don't know if that's because the soil here is different, stuff like that. The water doesn't flood as much. But in that park, south of the river, you have a lot of poplars, trees like that. And here you have ponderosas. You have this open woodland. And you don't know whether that's because somebody intentionally altered the land, whether it was preserved specifically because it was different. So there's a lot of different landforms here, and sometimes it's difficult to know why two places close to each other have different plants growing there. I said in one of my first videos that in a couple of days there would be grass, in a couple of weeks there would be flowers. Depends on what you mean by a couple of. It's been almost 20 days since I got here, and indeed there is grass. You can see the green coming up. That also counts as a couple of weeks, and I have seen some budding, but not a lot, so I might have estimated a little bit too liberally about when the spring would start. Kind of a hazard of coming from Costa Rica to Montana. It's hard for me to believe. Oh, but look at what do we have here. Those certainly look like some type of little flowers coming up. So there are some hardy flowers coming up, and we have seen some buds. And one thing is I'm making all these videos, and I'll have to make them all again in like 2 or 3 weeks when this place will look very different. At least I hope in 2 or 3 weeks it'll be looking different. Here's the other entrance and exit to the park. And I guess I just passed this right by. Didn't realize it was an entrance to a park when I was walking by the river. And now we're pretty much by the bridge where we came in. So I'm just going to walk back to my bicycle and ride home. Two things to say. One is that I've been in Hamilton for almost 3 weeks now. And I'm still finding things to capture just in the center of town. And the nature here, you know, you have two distinct mountain ranges. You have this river, you have creeks. The mountains and rivers themselves have a variety of features to them. There's a lot to capture without going too far. And sometimes I'm wondering, like, I just made a video just about like one park in one part of the town. Is this overkill? And maybe it is, but to me, it's like I lived here for years where I would go out and just watch the small changes and features, and it was always fascinating. So for me, there's a lot to capture, and every day and every week, there's new things to see. Second point is kind of related to that is right now I'm capturing, you know, it's still in a state of dormancy. Even the colors are a little bit bleak, a lot of grays and browns and kind of a washed out sky. But to me, that's just as beautiful and also just as important, you know, especially in an ecosystem that is dominated by a long cold season to show, well, this is what it looks like 5, 6, 7 months out of the year. And it's not just the very beautiful and verdant scenes you'll see in May, June, and July. So hopefully that was educational, and it's given people another opportunity to think about what they might want to see if they visit this part of this world. So now I'm going home, and there will be more to come.